In a letter to Constantin Huygens of December 1637, René Descartes wrote that he was working on a compendium of medicine based on books and on his own reasoning. Um, as you can see, he's speaking of an abrégé de médecine que je tire en partie des livres et en partie de mes raisonnements. This is interesting for many, many reasons. The first, of course, is a methodological reason, because Descartes is putting on the same balance books and his reasoning, so the activity of the intellect. A few lines earlier, he speaks of experience. So he's mixing different items, different aspects of knowledge. But at the same time, this is interesting because we know very little of what he was speaking about. So we don't know what these books are. We could have some ideas, but we don't have any very clear idea about this. And we don't know what this compendium, this abrégé de médecine, is. My claim is that he was not speaking of a re-elaboration of LHOMME. LHOMME is a text left unfinished, is unpublished and unfinished in 1633, which is one of the two main medical texts of Descartes. But LHOMME originally was the 17th chapter of a treatise on physics, that is Le Monde ou Traité de la Lumière. And in fact, LHOMME mostly focuses on some very specific issues. So a more complete, more exhaustive compendium of medicine seems far to be just a re-elaboration of LHOMME. At the same time, we know that the other main text, medical text of Descartes, today that is known as La Description du Corps Humain, Descartes claimed he was working on this text from 1645 to 1647. It seems unlikely that already in 1637, so 10 years earlier, he was planning this latter text. So I think that there should be something in the middle. This compendium of medicine could be something that stands in the middle between LHOMME and La Description du Corps Humain. We also know that in August 1637, so a few months earlier than the letter to Huygens, Descartes wrote to an anonymous recipient that he starts studying medicine. It is possible, of course, it's not meaning that he starts from the beginning, because we know that he did some study of medicine early in the early 1630s, but it means that he starts working on medicine again after the publication of the Discours de la Méthode, and likely with some significant new sections. In the Discours de la Méthode, he discussed a lot the circulation of blood, for example, the heartbeat, while in LHOMME he discussed a lot on sensation, the brain, and so on. So possibly in this month, from August to December, he was working on something that is different from both the brain and the heart. But again, we don't know. What was Descartes working on? To answer this question, we should look at the Stockholm inventory. The Stockholm inventory was made after Descartes' death in 1650, and it's a list of the text Descartes had with himself in Stockholm. And especially on letter E of this inventory, there are some interesting reference to medical text, to medical manuscripts, to medical notes. For example, we have the Primae Cogitationes circa Generationem Animalium, which is one of the biomedical manuscripts that today is published in the Adam Tannery. But we also have, for example, two folia on the formation of animals, and again another on animals, another folia entitled Remedia et Virtus Medicamentorum, and then something again on the nature, on the observation on the nature of plants and animals. And in the end, the last item is 3 pages entitled De Partibus Inferiore Ventre Contentis. As you can see in letter G, we have la description du corps humain. Well, of course, we know little about all these texts, so to speak. We have some of them have been published, clearly published in the Adam Tannery. As I was saying, the Prime Cogitationes, we can locate them in the Adam Tannery, but then with all the other folia, it's much more difficult to locate them. What is interesting is this last item entitled De Partibus Inferiore Ventre Contentis, because in the Excerpta Anatomica, which is another biomedical manuscript, Latin manuscript published in Adam Tannery, there is a section, there is a few notes that goes with this title, that is Observationum Anatomicarum Compendium De Partibus Inferiori Ventre Contentis. And at the same time, this note is date 1637. So, of course, we cannot be extremely sure, but I think that we can say that when writing to Huygens, Descartes was referring at least also to this work, to this text. Dealing with the Excerpta Anatomica is always a bit tricky because the Excerpta Anatomica is now published it was published by Louis-Alexandre Fouché de Careil in the 19th century, who discovered a manuscript of Leibniz who copied these notes from Claire Cellier in 1676. The problem is that we don't know what Leibniz exactly copied. So, well, in this case, it could be easily said from the Stockholm inventory. We can connect this note to what is written in the Stockholm inventory, but in general, the Excerpta Anatomica collects different notes. But for example, in the Excerpta Anatomica, there is a description of the nature of plants and so on. Also, we don't know whether Leibniz just followed the manuscript of Descartes, or if he browsed from one thing to another, mixing them. So it's not really clear the origin of the Excerpta Anatomica. At the same time, Fouché de Careil and Adam Tannery later published the Excerpta Anatomica together, while in the Leibniz work there are two different sections. The Excerpta Anatomica is split in two different sections. Another thing concerning the Excerpta Anatomica is that a few notes in the Excerpta Anatomica are in the Primae Cogitationes circa generationem animalium. So is strange that Leibniz copied also the Prima Cogitationes. We don't know what Leibniz exactly did. Especially, there are a few differences in the text of the Excerpta Anatomica and the Prima Cogitationes. Of course, it could be that the copyist made some mistakes or took a different or wrote it differently, so to speak. So the main problem is also a question of authorship, so to speak. And indeed, if we look at the compendium, this compendium, this was one of the question the editor, and especially Adam and Charles Adam raised, because according to Adam, this compendium was heavily drawn on Caspar Bauwin's Institutiones Anatomicae, which of course could be highly possible, as Descartes directly refers to Bauwin in one paragraph. And in another passage of this compendium, Descartes speaks of books. But and also the title of the compendium sounds like a section of Bauwin's work that is entitled Partes in inferiore ventre contentae. But at the same time, the two texts differ significantly. And of course, Descartes could have borrowed something from Bauwin. This is highly possible, of course. But at the same time, there are reasons to think that this is originally Cartesian, so to speak. While there are a few passages that could have been drawn, are excerpt or extract from medical text, other parts seem Cartesian. What is interesting of this text is not, well, not just its difficult story, but also that it seems a peculiar text in the Excerpta Anatomica. It seems original, so to speak, innovative also. First of all, because it is very different from the previous notes. Of course, this could be not extremely meaningful because we don't know if Leibniz copied following the pages or if he browsed from one page to another and so on. But well, there is this difference because the previous notes seems very laboratorial in the sense that Descartes was reporting anatomical dissections he made because he used the first person, used the imperfect, used the past, and so it seems that was something he was doing. While the compendium has a different person, and it is at the present tense. It has a more systematic explanation. And then, of course, there is the question of the date. The previous notes are dated November 1637. The compendium is just dated 1637. So it is possible that it is from at least it is from the last part of the year. But what is much more interesting is that Descartes is writing, is referring, is doing something that, well, the compendium contains something that is not present in other medical text by Descartes. It is true that in LHOMME, Descartes speaks of the organs of the abdomen, and he speaks of digestion, nutrition, but in the compendium he has a very different perspective. I also put here the text in Latin, but I'm really trying to give some brief comments on this. Um, One thing, for example, is on point number 6, um, where Descartes makes a reference, a list of the organs in the abdomen. So I speak of the limbs in general, the stomach, and then he refers to the pancreas. And this reference to the pancreas seems original in the sense that Descartes speaks of the pancreas as an organ in itself, separated from the other organs. If we look at the other text by Descartes, and especially to the correspondence with Regius, in the correspondence with Regius, the pancreas has a different role. While in this text, it seems that the pancreas is what we can call the pancreas in itself. So this is interesting. At the same time, this part of the note contains some verbs at the present tense at the first person, um, which of course it may refer to a direct observation by Descartes. Another interesting thing is the whole note is interesting because Descartes is describing the relationship between these organs, so the spleen and how it work in connection to the stomach, and how it make the juice move from the spleen to the stomach, and how they apply to perform digestion, which is extremely interesting and innovative. And another interesting aspect is contained in the last part of the note, in which Descartes provides a description, structural, a mechanical description of the fibers of the stomach. And in this description, it seems to emerge an interpretation of digestion and of all these organs as in themselves, so to speak. So these organs are not just, for example, the stomach is not just a receptacle of food, as it was in LHOMME, but it is an organ with a precise structure that is different from the other the limbs, for the other limbs, for example, and it seems a bit detached from the circulation of blood. While in LHOMME, the digestion heavily relied on the circulation of blood, in this case, the circulation of blood seems to be dependent on a relationship between the organs in the abdomen. So of course the spleen plays a role, the stomach plays a role, and then the food moves from the stomach to the liver and so on. So my claim is that this note is the stomach has an autonomous physiological structure, and so this note is innovative, is original. And what is interesting is that we don't find anything similar, of course, neither in l'homme, but nor in La Description du Corps Humain. And it is interesting because Descartes evidently worked on the structure of the abdomen, the organs of the abdomen, but he didn't use this note, this anatomical knowledge in his later works. Another another note, which I will very briefly comment, is just follows the compendium in the Excerpta Anatomica and deals with the formation of plants and animals. It is interesting because this note is present in both the Prima Cogitationes and the Excerpta Anatomica. I have already discussed several issues of this note. So I will move to my focus of today. First of all, I think that Ocante is wrong in dating this note from 1632, because I have the impression that this note contains a more theoretical approach to embryology at large, because Descartes starts from um, an hypothesis, I think, and they conclude this note saying that from this point we can deduce the structure and the formation of organs. I have the impression that in this note, Descartes is not speaking of the formation, the actual formation of organs, which is in the last part of the note, but of a predisposition of matter. So when life starts, when from in the semen or in the eggs, in the seeds, there is a predisposition of particles that move in a precise way. And after this predisposition, the organs start to be formed, so to speak. And I think that in this note he is discussing this predisposition. So he's following a very theoretical interpretation of preformative interpretation of generation. What is interesting is that also this note is in the Prima Cogitationes, there are two diagrams of this note. The first one, which are totally unintelligible, which is strange because, as we know, Descartes, according to Descartes, images have an important role to make clear what he was describing. But it's interesting because in the appendix of the Excerpta Anatomica, we have different figures. So it is not clear if these figures were made by Descartes himself or by Leibniz, or I don't know, by someone else. And this is a re-elaboration of these images, and there is also another elaboration of this, the second image made by Ocante. So in the end, to conclude, my point is that contained in the Excerpta Anatomica, there are notes that seem significant to explore the more unstudied segments of Cartesian physiology, that especially are nutrition and generation. But at the same time, these notes are difficult because we know very little of them. We don't know whether Descartes is the real author of them, or if he copied them. And what also is strange is that Descartes never used the interpretation contained in this note again. But it's interesting because there is a sort of balance between an interpretation of which is important, a mechanical interpretation of the structure and the functions of the body, and several obscurities, because of course also these notes are sometimes um, not very clear. And so I think that at the same time they are important, but they also are difficult, and reveal the condition of Cartesian medicine in general. Thank you very much for your attention.